Your most important ability, responsibility. The fight to take responsibility occurs within, and rarely does talent, intelligence, or opportunity make the difference in whether a person wins that battle. It calls for character. That's why Stuart B. Johnson remarked, "Our business in life is not to get ahead of others, but to get ahead of ourselves. To break our own records, to outstrip our yesterday by our today." You can tell when people develop deeper character, accept responsibility for themselves, and begin learning from their failures. It really shows in their performance. For example, I observed that in Chris Chandler of the NFL's Atlanta Falcons after I moved to Georgia. Chandler is a quarterback who had a history of floating from team to team. Prior to his employment with Atlanta, he had played for 5 teams in 9 years. He had never excelled. But everything started to change for him in Phoenix. That's where he met Jerry Rome. "I was at a point where I really didn't care anymore," says Chandler about that part of his career. His view of the league affected his willingness to take full responsibility for his lack of success. "I thought the NFL was just totally political, and I was ready to quit. Jerry brought back my competitiveness, and he taught me how to play. He made it fun again." How did Rome accomplish that? He told Chandler the truth. "I told him after the season that he had a lot of ability, but he was uncoachable. I offered to work with him. At first, Chandler resisted. He expected everyone else to adjust to his style and his ability. But then he changed his mind and accepted Rome's offer. With help, hard work, and a new willingness to change himself rather than expecting others to change, Chandler has become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, taking his team to the Super Bowl in 1999. Another road to fame. Not everyone learns the lesson of accepting responsibility for her actions. One of the most unusual stories I've encountered was about someone on the highway to failure, that is Ruiz Ruzi. Back in 1980, she was the first woman to cross the finish line of the Boston Marathon, with the 3rd fastest women's time ever. But from the moment that she finished the race, people were suspicious about her victory. The person most shocked was Jacqueline Garreau, though not favored to win the race. Garreau had been in training for 3 years, and during the course of the race, she had pulled ahead of all the other women. It appeared that she was going to win, but about a mile from the finish line, another woman suddenly appeared running ahead of her. And that other woman, Ruiz, finished before her and was declared the women's winner. Immediately, there was a stir. "I knew something was fishy," said men's winner Bill Rogers. He said that Ruiz had too much body fat and not enough muscle to be a distance runner. On top of that, at the finish, she did not appear fatigued, was not sweating heavily, and displayed unfamiliarity with running terminology when being interviewed. The race officials were suspicious, and they began to investigate. They found that Ruiz had qualified for the Boston Marathon by obtaining a fraudulent qualifying finish for the New York Marathon. They surmised that in the Boston race, Ruiz had jumped into a group of runners a mile from the finish line, never suspecting that she was actually ahead of the other women. The Boston Athletic Association disqualified her, and a week later they awarded Garreau the winner's medal. Still on the freeway. What's most amazing is that even 10 years later, Ruiz still hadn't learned from her mistake. At a 10-kilometer race in Miami, Garreau saw Ruiz and tried to talk to her to clear the air. Garreau recounted, I said, "Why did you do that in Boston?" And she said, "Oh, I did run it." So there's no way you're going to have a conversation with her. 2 years after her appearance in the Boston Marathon, Ruiz was arrested and charged with stealing cash and checks from her employer. A year later, she was convicted for trying to sell 2 kilos of cocaine to an undercover police officer. As Sir Jehiah Stamp said, "It is easy to dodge our responsibilities, but we cannot dodge the consequences of our responsibilities." I don't know what Ruiz is doing today. Her past activities remind me of the bumper sticker that I've always seen that says, "Don't follow me, I'm lost." Back then, Ruiz was doing a lot of moving, but she wasn't getting anywhere. Let's hope she finally found her way off the highway to failure. Your 5th step to failing forward. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. Take a hard look at a very recent failure that you have considered not to be your fault. Look for anything negative in the failure that you should claim responsibility for. Then own it. Once you begin thinking in terms of what is your responsibility, you will be able to change. And changing your mind, the way you think about failure, is the next step towards failing forward, and the subject of the next part of this book. Steps to failing forward. 1. Realize that there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. 2. Learn a new definition of failure. 3. Remove the you from failure. 4. Take action and reduce your fear. 5. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. Do you mind changing your mind? 6. No matter what happens to you, failure is an inside job. Life is not simply holding a good hand. Life is playing a poor hand as well. Danish saying. When you learn to accept responsibility for yourself, your problems, and your failures, you are better prepared to fail forward. But what about when you're faced with overwhelming difficulties that you didn't create and you can't control? At no time in life are people more prone to allow failure to overcome them and to give up than when external circumstances cause extreme hardship or grief. But ultimately, no matter whether the difficulty is self-created or comes from somewhere outside them, failure is created within them. It is always an inside job. Let me illustrate. In the spring of 1999, my publisher, Thomas Nelson, invited me to speak at various cities around the country on a book tour. One of my stops on that trip was in Lexington, Kentucky, and it was there that I met Greg Horn, owner of the Payless Food Center, a grocery store in Xanthenia, Kentucky. Greg told me an incredible story that shows no matter what happens to you, the important thing is what happens in you. Greg Horn is an example of a person who learned how to fail forward. Many people desire to control the circumstances of their lives, but the truth is that we cannot determine what will come our way. We can't control the hands we're dealt, only how we play the cards. That is what Greg did. He could have made the flood a tombstone for his store and career. Instead, he turned it into a stepping stone for his employees, for his community, and for himself. I got into the grocery business because I wanted to make an impact on people, says Greg. Before I opened the store in Xanthenia, I worked for Hershey's Chocolate, and I had a $1.2 million territory. I was making a good living, but that wasn't enough. Since the time of the flood, He has received numerous awards and has been recognized as the Business Person of the Year by his local Chamber of Commerce. And he is using the negative experience of the flood to begin a career in motivational speaking. Almost every week, Greg publicly communicates his message of encouragement to others. South African General Jan Christian Smuts declared, "A man is not defeated by his opponents, but by himself." That's true. No matter how daunting the circumstances of your life may be, the greatest battle you wage against failure occurs on the inside, not the outside. How do you fight that battle? You start by cultivating the right attitude. How you see is what you get. You're probably familiar with Murphy's Law, which says, if anything bad can happen, it will. And at the worst possible time. And then there's the Peter Principle, which says, people always rise to the level of their incompetence. By the way, they were both written by pessimists. A similar saying is the law of human behavior. Sooner or later, we get just what we expect. I have a question to ask you. Is the law of human behavior optimistic or pessimistic? Stop and think about your answer. I say that because your response reveals your attitude. If you expect the worst out of life, then you probably said that the law was written by a pessimist. If you have a positive outlook, then you probably said that the answer was written by an optimist, because the prospect of getting what you expect is encouraging to you. Your attitude determines your outlook. Positive attitude, the first key to what happens in you. The first element in winning the internal battle against failure is a positive outlook. University of Pennsylvania psychology professor Martin Seligman, who has studied employees in 30 different industries, observes, the people who bounce back are optimists. Let's face it, not everyone is naturally optimistic. Some people are born in seeing the glass half empty rather than half full. But no matter what your natural bent is, you can become a more optimistic person. How can you cultivate optimism? By learning the secret of contentment. If you can learn that, then no matter what happens to you, you can weather the storm and build on the good that you can find in any situation. Contentment. That's not a popular concept these days. One reason that our culture actually discourages the idea of contentment is people are continually bombarded with the message. What you have just isn't enough. You need more. A bigger house, a better car, a larger salary, whiter teeth, sweeter breath, nicer clothes. The list is endless. But the truth is that possessing healthy contentment is essential to being that to withstand failure. There is a lot of misconceptions about contentment. Let's look what it is not. 1. Not containing your emotions. We all experience negative emotions. How do you think Greg Horn felt when he saw his store 6 feet underwater? Although you don't want to let your emotions run amok, you shouldn't try to stuff them either. Denial does not help you become content. Your emotions will come out eventually, even if you try to bury them. If you try suppressing your emotions as a strategy for attaining contentment, you might end up like the older man who lay in the hospital on the verge of death. As he floated on the verge of consciousness for 2 weeks, his faithful wife sat in a chair beside him at every moment. When he finally became lucid enough to speak, he whispered, "Honey, you have been with me through all the bad times. When I got fired, you were there to support me. When we lost the house, you had never left my side. You were there when I lost the business, and when my health started failing." "Yes, dear," she answered, smiling. "You know what?" he said. "What, dear?" she asked. "You're such bad luck. Stuffing your emotions will not lead to contentment." 2. Not maintaining your current situation. My dad, who was a pastor for many years, used to tell the story about a farmer in one of his churches who refused to improve himself. Dad would try to encourage and cajole him, but the man just wouldn't change. His response to my father was always the same: "I'm not making much progress, but I'm well established." One day, my father was driving past that man's farm, and when he saw that farmer's tractor was stuck in the mud, no matter what that man did, mud flew, and the tractor just stayed put. After the farmer gave it one more try, and was no better off than he had been before, he started cussing up a storm. At that point, my dad rolled down his window and hollered out to the man, "Well, you're not making much progress, but you are certainly well established." Being content doesn't mean being satisfied with a bad situation. It simply means having a good attitude as you work your way out of it. When Greg Horn found his store flooded, he didn't give up, and he didn't give in. He made the best of it and worked his way forward. 3. Not attaining position, power, or possessions. In our culture, too many people believe that contentment comes from attaining material possession or positions of power. But they aren't the keys to contentment either. If you are tempted to believe that they are, remember the words of John D. Rockefeller when a journalist asked him how much wealth was enough. The millionaire, who was at the time one of the richest and most powerful men in the world, answered, "Just a little more." Contentment comes from having a positive attitude. It means expecting the best in everything, not the worst. Remaining upbeat, even when you get beat up. Seeing solutions in every problem, not problems in every solution. Believing in yourself, even when others believe you have failed. Holding on to hope, even when others say it is hopeless. No matter what happens to you, a positive attitude comes from within. Your circumstances and your contentment are completely unrelated. Positive action, the other key to what happens in you. You cannot win the internal battle against failure without the positive attitude that contentment provides. But if you think positively and do nothing, you will not be able to fail forward. You must add positive action to a positive attitude. A problem is something that can be solved. A fact of life is something that must be accepted. Some people get into trouble because they focus their attention on things that are far beyond their control. Leadership expert Fred Smith says that the key to positive action is to know the difference between a problem and a fact of life. A problem is something that can be solved. A fact of life is something that must be accepted. For example, for Greg Horn, the flood was a fact. He didn't waste his time wondering what would have happened if he had located the store elsewhere. No other grocery store in town was flooded. Not having flood insurance was a fact. So was the reality that he could not get into his store for days. But Greg focused on the problems he could solve instead of the problems that he couldn't solve. such as how to raise money to make repairs and how to buy new inventory, how to clean the refuse out of his building, and how to reopen for business as quickly as possible. He put his attention where it would do him some good and remained as positive as possible, and also applied positive action. It's a state of mind. Failure is an inside job. So is success. If you want to achieve, you have to win the war in your thinking first. You can't let the failure outside you get inside you. You certainly can't control the length of your life, but you can control its width and its depth. You can't control the contour of your face, but you can control its expression. You can't control the weather, but you can control the atmosphere of your mind. Why worry about the things that you can't control when you can keep yourself busy controlling the things that depend on you? I read an article that highlighted the strength, courage, and resilience of the Norwegian people. Some of the toughest explorers in history have come from Norway, including Roald Amundsen, whom I wrote about in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It doesn't matter how harsh the climate or how difficult the circumstances, they always seem to persevere. That ability has become a part of their culture. They are a nation of outdoor enthusiasts, living on the edge of the Arctic Circle. The Norwegians have a saying that I think captures their attitude. There is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. A man who keeps failures outside. Right now you may be saying, well, that's all and good for you, John. You haven't experienced what I have. Even Greg Horn's story is nothing compared to mine. All he lost was money. If you still have a hard time believing that failure is really an inside job, then you need to hear the story about someone who maintained a winner's attitude while overcoming the most difficult of circumstances. His name is Roger Crawford, and as I write this, he's about 40 years old. He makes his living as a consultant and public speaker. He has written 2 books and travels all across the country working with Fortune 500 companies, national and state associations, and school districts. Those aren't bad credentials, but if they don't impress you, how about this? Before becoming a consultant, he was a varsity tennis player for Loyola Marymount University and later become a professional tennis player certified by the United States Professional Tennis Association. Still not impressed. Would you change your opinion if I told you Roger has no hands and only 1 foot? No handicap. Roger Crawford was born with a condition called ectrodactylism. When he emerged from his mother's womb, the doctors saw that he had a thumb-like projection extending from the right forearm, and a thumb and finger growing out of the left forearm. He had no palms. His legs and arms were shortened, and his left leg possessed a shrunken foot with only 3 toes. The foot was amputated when he was 5 years old. Various medical professionals told Roger's parents that he would never be able to walk, probably would not ever be able to take care of himself, and would never be able to lead a normal life. After recovering from the shock, Roger's parents were determined to give him the best chance possible for living a normal life. They raised him to feel loved, to be strong, and to develop independence. You are only as handicapped as you want to be, his father used to tell him. When he was old enough, they sent him to regular public schools. They involved him in sports. They encouraged him to do everything his little heart desired. And then they taught him to think positively. Something my parents never did was allow me to feel sorry for myself or to take advantage of other people because of my handicap, observes Roger. If he can do it. Roger appreciated the encouragement and training he received from his parents, but I don't think he really understood the significance or the extent of his achievements until he was in college, and he interacted with someone who really wanted to meet him. He received a phone call from a man who read about his tennis victories, and Roger agreed to meet him at a nearby restaurant. When Roger stood up to shake hands with the man, he discovered that the other guy had hands that were almost identical to his. Roger became excited because he thought that he had finally found someone similar to him, but older, who could act as his mentor. But after talking with the stranger for a few minutes, he realized that he was wrong. Roger explains. Instead of what I found was someone with bitter, pessimistic attitude who blamed all of life's disappointments and failures on his anatomy, I soon recognized that our lives and attitudes couldn't have been more different. He had never held a job for long, and he was sure this was because of discrimination. Certainly not because, as he admitted, he was constantly late, frequently absent, and failed to take any responsibility for his work. His attitude was, the world owes me, and his problem was that the world disagreed. He was even angry with me because I did not share his despair. We kept in touch for several years until it dawned on me that even if some miracle were to suddenly give him a perfect body, his unhappiness and lack of success wouldn't change. He would still be at the same place in his life. That man had allowed failure to seize him from the inside, while Roger had mastered the art of failing forward. You can too. Chances are that the adversity in your life has been nowhere near as difficult as Roger Crawford's has been. And that's why his story is such an inspiration. Roger maintains, handicaps can only disable us if we let them. This is true not only of physical challenges, but of emotional and intellectual ones as well. I believe that real and lasting limitations are created in our minds, not in our bodies. In other words, no matter what happens, failure is an inside job. Your sixth step to failing forward. Don't let the failure get inside of you. What in your life have you considered to be the greatest source of frustration and failure? Think about that factor and then list all the heartaches, pains, obstacles, and problems related to it. Write them here. Now, consider the items one at a time and decide whether each is a fact of life which you need to accept and then move beyond, or an item that requires positive action. For a fact of life, write fact next to each item. And determinative to be positive despite the adversity, Roger Crawford was, for any item needing action, in the space on the right-hand side, write down what you ought to do to create the positive change in your life. Then vow to do it cheerfully. Steps to failing forward. 1. Realize there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. 2. Learn a new definition of failure. 3. Remove the you from failure. 4. Take action and reduce your fear. 5. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. 6. Don't let the failure get from outside of you to inside of you. 7. Is the past holding your life hostage? One reason God created time was so that there would be a place to bury the failures of the past. James Long. When I get a bit of time off, I like to play golf. I'm not a great golfer. I'd say I'm average, but I'm a lot better than I once was. When I first started playing golf in 1969, I was terrible. I used a baseball grip. I tried to muscle the ball down the fairway, which caused my ball to have a big hook, often putting me in the woods and in the rough. I was 22 years old when I started playing. Maybe I would have had an easier time if I had started when I was 5 years old. As of many today's players, who knows? But no matter what, I'm just glad I started golfing. And I can tell you who sparked my interest in the sport. Arnold Palmer. Before Tiger Woods. Arnold Palmer is one of the great sportsmen of the 20th century, and he really put professional golf on the map. Rick Riley in Sports Illustrated wrote, basically, he took a game that was a little too prissy, a little too clubby, a little too saturated with Ivy League men trying not to soil their cardigans, and breathed some sweet life into it. Or, as Vin Scully says, in a sport that was high society, he made it high noon. That's why someone as pro Tour Rocco Mediate told Palmer during the hoopla, at Palmer's last U.S. Open, you made all of this possible. Of Palmer, Tiger Woods simply stated, he was what I wanted to be like. Many people of my generation, I was born in 1947, became golfers because of Arnold Palmer. Just as the popularity of the game today has increased because of Tiger Woods, Palmer was a consummate golf professional. Like Woods, he started playing as a small boy, and as he grew up, he performed just about every job he could on the golf course. His father was a golf pro and a course superintendent. Palmer has been active in professional golf for more than 40 years and has won 92 championships, 61 of them on the U.S. PGA Tour, from 1960 to 1963. He was the greatest golfer in the world, winning 29 PGA victories. That ability got him named Sports Illustrated's Sportsman of the Year in 1960. An Athlete of the Decade according to Associated Press's poll. One writer said of Palmer that he combined the boldness of a Brinks bandit with the fearless confidence of a man on a flying trapeze. He doesn't play golf, he assaults it. And golf legend Bobby Jones once said, if I ever had an 8-foot putt and everything I owned depended on it, I'd want Arnold Palmer to take it for me. Palmer's down-to-earth attitude and sparkling personality, rugged good looks, and incredible playing ability caused him to draw huge crowds of spectators who would follow him from hole to hole, just as Tiger Woods fans do today. Back then they were dubbed Arnie's Army, and it seemed they'd follow him anywhere to get a chance to see the man they'd called the King to perform on the course. It was a first for golf, and it was sure fun to watch. Even the best stumble. Any golfer can have a really bad hole, even a Hall of Famer like Arnold Palmer. The key to playing through it is to forget about the bad shots. That can be a difficult thing to do, especially when someone erects a bronze monument to your bad hole. That is what happened to Arnold Palmer. It occurred at the 1961 Los Angeles Open at the peak of Palmer's career. On the par 5 ninth hole, his last of the day, the Palmer hit a good drive and wanted to put the ball on the green with his second shot. He would be in a position to attempt a birdie, getting one stroke closer to the leaders. With his 3-wood, Palmer hit what he believed was a good shot, but as the ball sailed, it faded into the right, hit a pole, and bounced out of bounds onto the driving range. Palmer dropped a ball, took a penalty stroke, and tried again. This time, the ball hooked to the left and flew off the course into the road. Again, he dropped a ball and took a penalty stroke. He repeated this process, hitting the ball out of bounds several times. Finally, he put the ball on the green. By then he had accumulated 10 strokes. It took him 2 more strokes with his putter to hold the ball. He finished with a 12, and because of that, he went from a few strokes behind the leaders to scoring so poorly he was out of the tournament. A monument to failure. Today, nearly 40 years later, if you will go to the 9th hole at Rancho Park Golf Course in Los Angeles, you will find a bronze plaque that states, on Friday, January 9th, 1961, the first day of the 35th Los Angeles Open, Arnold Palmer, voted Golfer of the Year and Pro Athlete of the Year, took a 12 on this hole. In the late 1990s, I had the opportunity to meet Arnold Palmer, saying that golf was down at the Bay Hill Club in Orlando. I was playing with my brother Larry, and there in the foursome behind us was the king himself. As we were winding down for the day, I teed off from the second to last hole, and I hooked the ball really, really badly. It fired over into the adjacent fairway and righted another golfer. To my horror, as I yelled 4, I realized that the person about to be beaned was none other than Palmer. Fortunately, he ducked. About 6 months later, I received this in the mail. Arnold Palmer, Bay Hill Club, to Dr. John Maxwell. Dear John, on behalf of myself and the entire staff at the Bay Hill Country Club, we would like to wish you a happy 50th birthday. As founder of the club, I extend a personal invitation to join our amateur seniors tour. It would be our privilege to have you. John, on a personal note, when you almost decapitated me on the 17th hole last November, I made a mental note. That swing surely is from a man about to qualify for the senior circuit. I had no idea until I saw the member birthday roster that I was so right. This unique swing now qualifies you, along with your 50th birthday, to be an elite member of our seniors club. At our lodge, just ask for the senior discount. I'm sure you won't need ID. The staff prides itself on recognizing senior ability by hair color, facial lines, and other attributes. If all else fails, just show them your swing. That'll do it. Happy 50th birthday, John Maxwell. Keep swinging. Arnold Palmer. Good golfers don't dwell on bad performances. not if they want to remain good golfers. And that's always true of Arnold Palmer. Once asked about his performance at the Open on a hole 9, he commented, "That doggone plaque will be there long after I'm gone. But you will have to put things like that behind you." That's one of the wonderful things about golf. Your next shot can be as good or bad as your last one, but you'll always get another chance. How the past impacts the present. The same quality that makes a professional golfer effective enables any person to overcome failure and become a strong achiever. The ability to put past events beside him and move on. That quality positions a person to tackle current challenges with enthusiasm and a minimum of burdensome personal baggage. In contrast, someone who is unable to get over previous hurts and failures is held hostage by the past. The baggage he carries around makes it very difficult for him to move forward. In fact, in more than 30 years of working with people, I have yet to meet a successful person who continually dwells on his past experiences. A few years ago, I heard my friend Chuck Swindle tell the story of a chippy, the parakeet. He said the bird's problems began when the woman who owned him decided to clean up the seeds and loose feathers from the bottom of his cage using a vacuum. When the phone rang and the owner turned to pick it up, and you guessed it, with a thud and a whoosh, Chippy was gone. The owner quickly turned off the vacuum and unzipped the bag. There was Chippy. He was stunned, but breathing. Seeing that he was covered with black dust, his owner rushed Chippy to the bathtub, where she turned on the faucet full blast and held the bird under the icy water. At that point, she realized that she'd done even more damage, and she quickly cranked up her blow dryer and gave the wet, shivering little bird a blast. Chuck finished the story by saying, "Chippy doesn't sing much anymore." People who are unable to overcome the past are a little like Chippy. They allow their negative experiences to color the way they live their lives today. It may sound as if I'm making light of what may have happened to you in the past. I'm not. I know that people suffer genuine tragedies in this imperfect world. They lose children, spouses, parents, and friends, sometimes under horrible circumstances. My dad lost his mother before he was 8 years old. People contract cancer, multiple sclerosis, AIDS, and other debilitating diseases. They suffer unspeakable abuses at the hands of others. All of these things are true. But tragedies don't have to stop a person from possessing a positive outlook. Being productive and living life to the fullest, one man is born with severe disabilities and decides the world owes him, while another, such as Rawford Crawford, goes on to become a tennis pro. One person who contracts AIDS bitterly gives up on life, while another, such as basketball's Magic Johnson, builds his business and enjoys his family life. One woman experiences rape and withdraws into herself, while another, such as Kelly McGillis, overcomes the experience and becomes a successful actress in Hollywood. No matter how dark a person's past is, it need not color his present permanently. Signs of past breakdown. In my experience, The problems of people's pasts impact them in one of the two ways. They experience either a breakdown or a breakthrough. The following 5 characteristics are signs that people haven't got over past difficulties. 1. Comparison. If you hear people continually talk about how much harder they've had it than anyone else, chances are they are allowing themselves to be held hostage by their past. Their motto is similar to something Quentin Crisp once said: never keep up with the Joneses. Drag them down to your level. It's cheaper. 2. Rationalization. Another characteristic of people trapped by their pasts is rationalization. Believing that there are good reasons not to get over past difficulties. Rationalization creates a fog that hinders people from finding solutions to their problems. Excuses, no matter how strong, never lead to achievement. 3. Isolation. As I've mentioned, some people withdraw due to their past hurts. For many, it's like a natural reflex that kicks in for self-protection. When naturally outgoing people isolate themselves because of the past, they become especially miserable. Author C.S. Lewis asserted, "We are born helpless. As soon as we are fully conscious, we discover loneliness. If we need others physically, emotionally, intellectually, we need them if we are to know anything, even ourselves." 4. Regret. A significant hindrance to living life in the present is regret. It saps people's energy and leaves little enabling them to do anything positive. My friend Dwight Bain emailed me something called The City of Regret. That tells the whole story. I had not really planned to take a trip this year, yet I found myself packing anyway, and off I went, dreading it. I was on another guilt trip. I booked my reservation with Wish I Had Airlines. I didn't check my bags. Everyone carries their baggage on this airline, and had to drag it for what seemed like miles into Regret City Airport. And I could see that people from all over the world were there with me, limping along under the weight of the bags they had packed themselves. I caught a cab over to Last Resort Hotel. The driver, taking the whole trip backward, looked over his shoulder, and there I found the ballroom where my event would be held, the annual pity party. As I checked in, I saw that all my old colleagues were there on the guest list. The Dunn family. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Both of the opportunities. Missed and lost. All of the yesterdays. There were too many to count, but all would have sad stories to share. Shattered dreams and broken promises. They'd be there too, along with their friends, Don't Blame Me, and Couldn't Help It. And of course, hours and hours of entertainment that would be provided by that renowned storyteller, It's Their Fault. As I prepared to settle in for a really long night, I realized that one person had the power to send all those people back home and break up the party. Me. All I had to do was return to the present and welcome the new day. If you have found yourself getting on a flight to the city of regret, recognize that it's a trip you book yourself, and you can cancel it at any time, without penalty or fee. But you're the only one who can. 5. bitterness. People who don't get beyond the problems or the pain of the past eventually become bitter. It is the inevitable consequence of not processing old injuries and tragedies. Wes Roberts, president of Life Enrichment, advises people do not have to remain victims of their pasts, but when they do, they become prisoners of their own emotions. Often these prisons are addictions, workaholism, alcoholism, sexual addictions, eating addictions. We place ourselves in prison. In other words, we allow the past to hold us hostage. No matter what you've experienced, remember this. There are people who've had it better than you and done worse. And there are people who've had it worse than you and done better. The circumstances really have nothing to do with getting over your own personal history. Past hurts can make you bitter or better. The choice is yours. Breakthrough, the alternative to break down. Every major difficulty you face in life is a fork in the road. You choose which track you will head down, towards breakdown or breakthrough. Dick Biggs, a consultant who helps Fortune 500 companies improve profits and increase productivity, writes that all of us have unfair experiences. As a result, some people merely exist and adopt a cease and desist mentality. He continues, one of the best teachers of persistence is your life's critical turning points. Expect to experience 3 to 9 turning points or significant changes in your life. These transitions can be happy experiences or unhappy times such as job losses, divorce, financial setbacks, health problems, and the death of loved ones. Turning points can provide perspective, which is the ability to view major changes within the larger framework of your lifetime and let the healing power of time prevail. By learning from your turning points, you can grow at a deeper level within your career and your life. If you've been badly hurt, then start by acknowledging the pain and grieving any loss you may have experienced. Then forgive the people involved, including yourself. If needed, doing that will help you move on. If you cannot accomplish that on your own, enlist the help of a professional. I understand that it may be very difficult to go through this process, but you can do it. Just think, today may be the day to turn the hurts of your past into a breakthrough for the future. Don't allow anything from your personal history to keep you held hostage. A dream beckons to the east. One person who always traveled light, without too much personal baggage, was Sister Frances Cabrini. On the March day in 1889, when the 38-year-old nun got off the boat at Ellis Island, she was thinking about the task ahead of her, helping establish an orphanage, school, and convent in New York City. She wasn't preoccupied with any of the problems from her past, though she had experienced plenty. Francesca Lodi Cabrini was born 2 months premature in the Lombardy town of Sant'Angelo, Italy, where she remained the sickliest child in the village. At age 6, she decided that she wanted to become a missionary to China. However, people mocked her dream. A missionary order would never accept a girl who is ill most of the time, her sister Rosa scoffed. At age 12, she took a vow of chastity, and when she reached the required minimum age of 18, she applied to join the Daughters of the Sacred Heart Convention. But she was indeed rejected because she was too sickly. Rejection was not going to make Cabrini give up her dream of ministering in Asia. She began doing what she could in her own village to build her strength and prove her worth. She taught neighborhood children. She cared for an older villager. And when a smallpox epidemic hit, she nursed family and friends through it until she became sick. After she recovered, she applied to the convent. She was turned down again.